guys, in today's video I wanted to talk about fat intake. Okay, so previously we talked about protein intake, carb intake, and now I want to talk a little bit about fat intake. Fat intake is one where, kind of similar to carb intake, there's a little bit more flexibility for most people. On one end of the spectrum, you have people on these like ketogenic diets that are extremely high fat on their intake and very low carbohydrate. On the other end of the spectrum, you have people that go like low fat, and it tends to just be generally just a low calorie diet. In both of those situations can be beneficial for different goals. But I do think, like, let's talk, if we establish the extremes here and we establish what can kind of put you on different ends of the spectrum, I think it'll give you a better idea of what your fat intake should be. So let's remember with fat intake that there is 9 calories per gram of fat. Okay, so I always give the example of like olive oil. Olive oil per tablespoon is about 120 calories, okay? And if you're anything like me, when you put olive oil on a food, you drizzle it in there. So those calories add up very quickly. So think about that when you are manipulating your fat intake. If you were to cut 40 to, let's say 50 grams of fat out, 50 times 9, do the math in your head, 450 calories, okay? So if I cut 50 grams of fat out of my diet per day, say I was eating 100 grams of fat, now I'm gonna eat 50 grams of fat, I'm gonna drop 450 calories from my overall diet without changing anything else, and I could probably lose pretty close to a pound a week on that, okay? 500 calorie deficit a day is about 3,500 a week, and you're looking at, you know, that pound of weight loss per week. So it can have a very significant effect on your weight, but it is important to know that you do need a minimum amount of fat to keep hormone production high, specifically testosterone, maintain kind of your brain health. Obviously, fat is a really important building block of a lot of your phospholipid membranes and things like that. So it's really important in brain health. It's really important in metabolic and endocrine health. And obviously it's used as an energy source, okay? It provides 9 calories per gram. And so your body likes to use fat as an energy source for sure. It definitely prefers carbohydrate, but depending on your diet, depending on what you're doing, depending on your RQ ratio and how you're training and stuff, fat can definitely be used as a really solid energy source. And so your body wants to hold on to a lot of that so it can last a long time, given like a famine or a time when you're not able to eat and you're running around looking for food and stuff like that from a survival standpoint. So fat's a really important one. I tend to de-emphasize it, honestly, when I talk about it with clients. And I know that sounds weird. I'm saying how it's important, and then I'm saying I de-emphasize it. But I only de-emphasize it because it tends to be something that gets sort of de-emphasized by clients. You know what I mean? They're always worried about their carb intake. That's like their main thing. So I always tell them, like, make your fat intake, like be aware of your fat intake, okay? Be aware of your nuts, your seeds, your oils, things like that, how fatty your meats are. That's really, really important because it can have a huge impact on your total calories. But I don't necessarily always tell people like, hey, hit 30 grams of fat, 50 grams of fat. I will typically say, you know what, we're gonna hit our protein intake, okay? We're gonna get that 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per body weight. Usually I just say hit close to a gram per pound body weight for most people. And carbohydrates, I want you to eat, to the point where, you can fuel your activity. And it's the same thing with fats. If you feel good on, 50 to 80 grams of fat, make it work, all right? And adjust your carbs accordingly. If you can get away with 30, 40 grams of fat and feel fine, your hormones feel fine, you got good energy, and you can do, aerobic activity without bonking out, then, that's fine for you too. It's a little bit more of a personal thing. Like I said, I wouldn't, I think a lot of the ketogenic people would go a little bit too overboard on the fats. Some of the low fat people are, all the way down, like, 20 grams of fat a day. I think you should probably have a little more than that. I usually recommend, get like 30, 40, maybe 50 per person. Again, if you're eating in a deficit and you're, let's say, a small, maybe a little bit older female with not a ton of body, like muscle on your body, you're not going to be able to have 100 grams of fat because that's 900 calories, and you're probably eating maybe 1,400 calories for the day. That makes it pretty tough to hit your other targets. I do think prioritizing protein should be number one. Carbs and fat can kind of be manipulated based off what you're doing. If you're laying around the house and not doing a whole lot, you probably don't have to have 300 grams of carbs that day, and you can probably get away with you know, replacing that with some nuts, some seeds, some fats, that'll give you more of that longer lasting energy as opposed to that kind of that carb high type feeling. So yeah, I don't have, you know, one specific answer for you in terms of how much fat you need to be eating, but I would definitely tailor it to your goals. And like I said, I would prioritize the protein first, and I would take carbs and fat and kind of modulate them based off what you're doing to hit that calorie goal, okay? Like I said, if you need a number, I'd say, yeah, hit 30, 40 grams a day for most people. You know, that can be all the way up to 80 to 100 to 150, even more for higher performing athletes. It all depends on, you know, what you're doing, what that task requires of you metabolically, and then, you know, what you're able to kind of fit in throughout the day and what your goals are. If you're trying to gain weight, you might have a little bit more fat in the diet. If you're trying to lose weight, it's a great place to cut calories because fat is so calorie dense. So if you guys are, you know, questioning anything about your diet, okay, how much protein, how much fat, how many carbs do I need, you know, how much this, that do I need, feel free to reach out to us. We do online consultations for nutrition, as well as we can see in the office as well for nutrition consultation, and then kind of set you up with some diet templates that will kind of put you in the right direction in terms of how much you should be eating and, you know, sort of like, you know, when you're supposed to be eating, what you should be fueling with, stuff like that, okay? So feel free to reach out, and we hope to hear from you. See ya.